First up, let's look at what has happened since the final day of the Premier League. A few departures, guys. We've Kieran Tini has gone to Celtic on a free. Jorginho has gone to Flamengo, of course. We've seen the two loanees depart. Any surprises for you, Clive?
Not yet.
No.
We all sort of knew this was coming. I think with particularly Tini and Jorginho, they're sort of good characters, aren't they? That's the impression that you get from seeing them around the club. Sometimes they've not had good playing time, so you can sort of see that they've reacted really well even when they're not playing. And so I think those characters may be missed. It'd be interesting to see how we refill those gaps, or maybe we already have with people like Marino, who's also a very good sort of character. So I think their experience will be missed, and now Kieran Tierney's gone off to Scotland. I think they're going to use him in that way, use his character to great example for the younger players up there. So fair play to him.
Yeah, look, there's a part of me, Rory, that thinks, I wouldn't have minded Kieran Tierney sticking around because we lack that full-back flying around on the outside. And I always think, tactically, it kind of just is another strand, isn't it, to the way that you play the game. But there really probably wasn't any justification in giving him a new deal, given the injury issues that he's had, right?
Yeah, 100%. I did enjoy some of his cameo appearances this season, you know, and there was definitely still a player there. And it's a shame the way his career panned out at Arsenal. But like you said, I think for him as well, moving back up to Scotland, you know, he will play a lot more. And the way that it ended, at least, you know, I actually enjoyed the fact that he did get to make those cameos towards the end of the season. We got to say a proper goodbye. And it is a good character that we've lost.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Jorginho then, chaps? Because, I mean, it felt a natural conclusion, didn't it? He has to go down as a really good signing, though, right? I mean, he was pretty cheap and he added good value to the squad.
I think that window with Jorginho, Kiwior and Trossard was an underrated window.
Yeah,
you know? If you think about their value over the last couple of years, it's been really huge.
Yeah.
You know, Jorginho also came in. What I liked about him was I felt, we all know he's a great coach from the substitutes bench.
Yeah, he loves it, doesn't he?
But he's also a great coach on the pitch.
Yeah.
And you can see that when Odegaard was out, he has almost been the tactical leader on the pitch. And I think Declan needed that in his first season to settle him down.
Yeah.
I think Havertz needed him to get him going when Havertz arrived. And that sort of value to bring those two expensive signings in to help them settle down was really, really good.
Yeah.
Adrian, you know as well as I do, I think physically he dropped away a little bit, you know, and those gaps started to appear. And when you don't play, the physical gap grows.
Yes.
And so it was time. It was time.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I think as well, Rory, that in Rice, in Marino and in Odegaard, we've got more than our fair share of leadership qualities in that part of the pitch. So maybe his influence was not quite as much.
Yeah, we do have a lot of leaders. I think the experience that he had was definitely useful. I think it was the PSG away game where he definitely wasn't fit to play but was on the bench just so that he could coach from the sideline. I think that kind of sums up the role that he probably played this season. And I wish in a way that we'd had him in more of his prime years. Because the relationship and the partnership he had with Rice on the pitch, actually, I think was a really underrated partnership through some of last season. So, no, I wish him all the best.
What happens with Thomas Partey now then, Rory? Because obviously we're hearing talk that talks are ongoing, that Arsenal actually want him to stay. Because I think there was an assumption among some people that maybe he would move on this summer, but that doesn't seem to be the case. As an Arsenal supporter, do you want him to stay?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think money is going to be one issue. I think he spoke recently about the fact that it's probably his last sort of big deal, and that money is obviously a deciding factor. And for us, I mean, if you lose Jorginho and Partey in the same window, that is a lot of experience to lose from the midfield at one go. I also still think Arteta probably sees him as a third choice right back when we need him. So do you bring in a younger replacement? You know, that's another signing. I think if you do lose him, you do need to bring another body in. And that's more work to do when there are other priorities.
Rory makes a good point about the money, because he's a big earner. We know that. Is he worth the money at the age that he is? We know he's the wrong side of 30 now. I thought he had a pretty good season. I've got to say, I thought actually in the main, he was still very much worth his place in Arsenal's strongest starting 11. There were ups and downs. I think with Thomas Partey, you know within the first 5 or 10 minutes whether he's going to have a good game or not, don't you? Because there's a sharpness element. And when he's on it, there's not many people better, Clive. But if he's not on it, then really he's not justifying the wages that we're paying.
Yeah, you watch him. You can see by how he moves straight away, how he receives the first pass.
Yeah.
If it's smooth, don't worry about him. I think it's going to be interesting because obviously he's on a good wage right now.
Yeah.
He's had 5 years at the club. His role within the squad is going to be different. So it's not just about accepting maybe less money over a 2-year period. It's about lesser role. Is he prepared for that, given who's coming in? And I think that's what he has to be talking about with his agent right now, and he's trying to get his best deal. If I'm him, I would probably look to go away and play somewhere else.
Yeah.
And for Arsenal, tactically, I think we've become, not say easy to read, but we all know our pattern. And he's part of that. We all know the Saliba to Partey to Odegaard to Saka. That we can close our eyes and see that happening. Maybe it's time for something else. Yeah. And we shouldn't be afraid of that change. You know, even though he's had probably his best season since he's been here.
If Partey does go, who have you got your eye on? Is there anyone out there that you think, because he would need replacing? You can't lose Jorginho and Partey and just bring in a Zubimendi, right?
You can't really, unless you were to buy another left-footed defender and say to Miles, you know what, mate, we're going to redefine you as a midfielder, which could happen. Yeah. Personally, I like Miles where he is. He's basically playing in midfield anyway, you know, so I like the role he has. And I think obviously he's playing for England in that role, and that could cause issues in the World Cup year. So you could go that way. Or for me, I would go for a younger centre midfielder, really. There's a couple out of France that are being mentioned, and I would look towards that. From a club perspective, they probably want to keep Partey because they don't want to outlay a transfer fee. Yes. But personally, I think it may be time to renew, and we should be looking to go a little bit younger in that area. Yeah. And I'm okay with it, right?
Yeah, well, Sambi Lokonga didn't work, did it really? He's probably one that's going to be on his way. What are these names? Who are these young names that have been?
There's a guy called Lucien Agame. I don't know why you got me speaking these names, Adrian. So I'm now going to look at the comments afterwards. Clive, you butchered that.
Where do you stand with Zinchenko, Rory? Because I kind of assumed he was leaving, but he's got another year, so you know he could in theory absolutely stay and be a valuable player for us as that cover at left back, and maybe that cover in central midfield, not for a replacement for Thomas Partey, of course, but someone who could just come on and help us in that department. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one with Zinchenko. I think obviously we know he can play in midfield because he's done it for Ukraine for so long, and I don't know, Arteta never really opted to do it, even when he had the opportunity to, until he was kind of really forced to at points this year. And when he did, I thought Zinchenko looked good. So I do think it's an option. I think if we lose Partey, I mean, I've thought for a while that alongside Declan Rice, we need someone else that's got legs in midfield, someone that can really eat up ground, because Rice has to do a lot of that work. So again, I don't know who's out there that could possibly do that. If we got a good offer for Alexander Zinchenko, would you take it though? Yeah, I think because of the minimal role that he's playing, he's on decent wages. If you can get the wages off and a decent fee, maybe allows you to go and get Jorel Hato, for example, who we've been into. So. Yeah, no, that is a player that I like the look of. Someone that can sort of play in a couple of positions as well. Talk to me about him, Clive.
Yeah, as soon as you watch the clips of him, I just see Miles there, maybe a touch more height and speed. Yeah, okay. You know, so although I like it, I'm also loath to sort of place a player on top of an academy player that's got a lot of the same attributes. So I almost don't want to do it, but it doesn't make sense. I actually think defensively we need a right-footed defender. Yes. I think that's where the gap is. You know, we have left-footed players that can cover that side. A right-footed defender that can play both sides at centre back. Looking at someone like Mark Gay, someone like that, who's the last year of his contract, that's a really smart player to go for, who can obviously play on the ball, pass out, and be part of our build-up play. So yeah,
but that's a lot of money, isn't it, to pay for someone who wouldn't be your first choice?
He wouldn't be the first choice, but it's interesting that we went very hard for Dean Huijsen with the same type of discussion. And again, right-footed defender, can play both sides, can carry the ball out. Excuse me. And so I do think Arsenal are thinking about this.
What about Kivior? He's not a Gabriel. I don't think he's ever going to quite be at that level, but he showed his worth, didn't he? I mean, does he want to stay and be that understudy, I wonder? So could there be a move in the offing for him? Or if you're Arteta or Andrea Berta, are you thinking, no chance of my selling Kiwior this summer.
I mean, sometimes you've got to sell when the stock is high.
Okay.
And
yeah.
his stock is high. Napoli have had a little look at him, and AC Milan have looked at him and Zinchenko. So I think that would be interesting, but also they've got to bring the money, right? It's not a charity. And,
That's the thing for Kiwior. It's at this point, do you pick game time or do you pick, possibly winning the biggest trophies?